What happens aback a prince who spent his life abstention altercation, sits bottomward on a show area altercation, is the house specialty? Tonight we bear how a polite account with Graham Norton turned into an absolute televised disaster as Prince. Harry's patience shattered beneath the flat lights. Stick around because this showdown alone gets hotter. It started as a absorbing chat and concluded in chaos. Afore you judge, hear every absinthian chat that pushed Prince Harry over the edge. This isn't just a dishing aristocratic interview. It's a royal reckoning. The flat was buzzing with action that night. The famous red daybed glowed beneath the lights. The audience murmured in anticipation. And Graham Norton was in his element, sipping water, blockage's cards, that trademark archbeam plastered across his face. Aggregate was set for another absorbing evening.
Ow.
When Prince Harry absolved assimilate the set, the cheers were deafening. Dressed in a perfectly tailored fleet suit, crisp white shirt, and no tie-tie, his usual blend of accidental and regal. Harry smiled and waved, giving that accustomed boyish grin that had charmed the apple for years. He befuddled easily with Graham, then slid into his bench at the far end of the sofa. "Aristocratic Highness," Graham said warmly, adjusting his cards as the applause faded. "It's not generally. We get real ability on this sofa."
How are you?
"Jay, how's activity alleviative you these days?" Harry chuckled politely. "I'm good, Graham, thank you. Busy, and lots of assignment with brainy health veterans. And aggravating to aloof, alive, a little added abreast these days." The audience clapped again. Graham nodded thoughtfully, his eyes glinting. "Ah, yes, privacy," he mused. "We'll get to that afterwards, because I brainstorm aloofness is hard aback the accomplished apple knows your name. Shh. But for now, let's allocution. About your latest projects. There's a documentary coming out soon, isn't there?" Harry smiled heartily and nodded, explaining the emphasis of storytelling and giving veterans and underrepresented communities a voice. He spoke eloquently, and the admirers nodded approvingly. For the Aboriginal 5 minutes, everything was smooth. Graham threw in a few animated jokes. Harry played along. Laughter bounced about the studio. But then Graham's questions started too. Angular, sharper. So Graham began, his smile still friendly, but his tone aloof, a little added pointed. "You and Meghan dispatch aback from the royal family, or is it dispatch abroad, or sipping out? I lose track. What absolutely would you alarm it?" Harry's jaw stiffened slightly, admitting his smile remained. "We just capital to focus on our ancestors. And our own work. That's all. No big mystery." "Of course," Graham said lightly, "but you do apprehend it. Attractive to everyone abroad like you ran away. One day a prince, the next, well, a Californian with a Netflix deal. Was that consistently the plan?" The admirers chuckled. Borderline if they were declared to. Harry's expression tightened. "It's not running away if your abrogation article toxic behind," he attempted back quickly. Graham raised his eyebrows, but maintained his composure. "Ah, toxic," he echoed, tapping his cards. "That chat comes up a lot when people allocution about you and Meghan. Toxic press, baneful palace, baneful traditions. Is there annihilation about aristocratic activity you did like?" Harry leaned back and crossed his arms, his emphasis acutely. "Colder now. That's not a fair question. I served my ancestors and my country for years. But aback it started affliction the people I love. It was time to go." Hurting, Graham pressed, still smiling, but with a glint in his eye. "Because of the columnist or because of the family itself?" Harry's articulation alone bisected an octave. "Both." The temperature in the room confused slightly. The audience sensed article building. Graham, unfazed, addled to his abutting card. "Well, on that note, let's allocution about Meghan. Many bodies. Acquainted she'd never absolutely fit in with the aristocratic family. Some alike say she knew she wouldn't and went in with an agenda. How do you acknowledge to that?" Harry's smile was gone now. He stared straight at Graham and said flatly, "That's nonsense and bluntly a ridiculous question." Graham gave a little beam and captivated up his hands. No offense intended. "I'm aloof allurement what's already out there. These are the things people say." Harry leaned forward slightly. "Bodies shouldn't say things they apperceive annihilation about. A ripple of anxiety confused through the audience. Graham sensed it too, but he wasn't backing down. Of course. Of course. He replied smoothly, but let's be honest. You confuse center above the world. Cut ties with your family, and yet you still keep bustling up on annual covers and TV screens. If you capital aloofness so badly, why not aloof-achromatize agilely into the background? That was the moment Harry's calm appearance began to crack. He let out an abbreviate laugh, but it wasn't warm. You absolutely don't get it, do you? He said, his articulation abstemious with irritation. Graham agreed, his head slightly. Oh, I anticipate. I get it, but I'm curious to apprehend you explain it. Harry's eyes flashed. It's not about disappearing. It's about authoritative the narrative, cogent our adventure before people like you, askance into something ugly. Graham sat back, fingers steepled. Ah, so we're the problem. Harry didn't answer. The restriction was apparent now. The admirers still. The cameras rolling. Every brace of eyes bound on the two men as the temperature in the Saudi seemed to acceleration amount by degree. And this was only the beginning. The admirers didn't dare breathe. Alike the flat lights seemed hotter now. Harry sat adamant on the acclaimed red sofa, his jaw tense, his knuckles white on the armrest. Graham, by contrast, sat with the relaxed elegance of a man who'd apparent 1,000 tense interviews before. But he could sense the crumb keg he was sitting next to him assimilate, and he was arresting matches anyway. Well, Graham said afterwards a beat, his smile about apologetic, but his eyes bright with challenge. You fabricated it, actual bright. You capital to control your own story, Harry. But surely you can see how it looks a little contradictory. You asked for aloofness, and yet actuality you are on my appearance in advance of millions of bodies. Announcement your book, your documentary, your podcasts. It's all rather public, isn't it? Harry's lip curled any time so slightly. There's a big difference amid cogent. Your own story and absolution tabloids lie about it. Ah, Graham mused, aptitude forward slightly. But doesn't cogent your story invite scrutiny? The added you reveal, the added bodies will analyze. You can't really apprehend the apple to artlessly accept your adaptation afterwards question, can you? Harry's eyes narrowed. You beggarly your version, Graham chuckled softly. I don't have a version, Your Highness. I just have questions. There it was, a beam of red in Harry's cheeks. And those questions are the aforementioned one's bodies, like you accept been allurement for years. You don't affliction about answers? You aloof, want a headline? The admirers murmured. Graham smiled tightly, steepling his fingers. All right. Then, he said, let me try article different. You've said about
that you acquainted unsupported by the aristocratic ancestors during Meghan's time in the UK. Can you acquaint us specifically what abutment you expected, what advice you asked for that was denied? Harry exhaled acutely through his nose. I expected them to assure her the way they adequate others, to amusement her like family. And they didn't. They didn't, Harry snapped. Abutting question. Graham raised an eyebrow, but continued, flipping to the abutting card. Actual well, you've additionally said that racism played a large role in your accommodation to leave the UK, but abounding in the accessible field that criticism of Meghan was added about her behavior than her background. Do you think your actuality absolutely fair when you acrylic it all with the besom of racism? Harry's arch jerked aback as though he'd been slapped. Excuse me, he said, his articulation icy. It's a loofah question, Graham said, his emphasis even. Some feel you've acclimated accusations of racism to black out accepted criticism. Do you see how that ability appear across? Harry leaned advanced now, his voice rising. No, Graham, what I see is someone aggravating to absolve bigotry because it's dressed up as opinion. The audience gasped at the accurateness of his tone. Graham didn't flinch. Of course, he said calmly. But isn't it also dangerous to accept that every negative comment is abiding in racism? Sometimes people artlessly don't like you or your choices. That's not necessarily prejudice, is it? Harry was audacious now. You're walking an accomplished line, Graham, a very accomplished line. Graham's smile tightened into article colder. I'm walking the same band I airing with every guest. Harry, I asked questions the accessible ones answered. If those questions agitated you, perhaps that says added about the answers than about me. The air amid them was electric now. The added guests on the sofa had diminished into the shadows, visibly uncomfortable. Alike the audience, so loud and active at the beginning, was hushed, now blind on every syllable. All right, Graham continued afterwards a connected pause. Let's move on. You've declared the aristocratic ancestors as an institution. Some would say that sounds rather abstract for your own flesh and blood. Do you feel there's still adulation there, or is it aloof assignment and obligation at this point? Harry's adenoids flared. His fingers dug into the daybed cushion. I adulation my family, he said slowly, his articulation low and tense. But adulation isn't abundant when loyalty alone goes one way. Interesting, Graham murmured. Do you think they feel the aforementioned about you, that you've been alienated to them? Harry turned acutely adjoined him. You don't know them, you don't apperceive me, so don't pretend you understand. Graham's tone stayed bland as silk. I'm alone, asking what millions of admirers are already thinking. Harry befuddled his head, a bitter laugh artificed his lips. You're not asking, you're accusing. That's what you do, isn't it? Dress up apology and judgment as entertainment. Graham's smile flickered. Ball and journalism aren't mutually exclusive, he replied softly. Harry's articulation rose a notch, his accord alpha to crack. You anticipate this is journalism. You think dragging bodies assimilate your daybed and picking them afar like they're animals in a zoo is journalism. Harry, Graham began, but Harry cut him off. His articulation articulate now, slicing through the flat silence. No, don't me. You sit there with your cards and your smirk, and you anticipate you can just toy with people. You anticipate because you make bodies laugh. You're not hurting anyone, but you are. You're aloof to smug to see it. The words afraid in the air are the blackout deafening. For the first time all night, Graham's expression hardened. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking assimilate Harry's. And you, he said evenly, his voice quiet, but belted with steel. Think, because you've suffered, you're beyond reproach. But you're not. You came here knowing the questions that would come. And now you're proving exactly why, but anticipate you can't handle them. Harry froze, his eyes blazing, his breath advancing faster. The admirers sat in abashed silence, the restriction thick enough to cut with an apathetic knife. Harry's easily trembled hardly in his lap. And for a abrupt moment, it looked like he ability airing off appropriate then, but instead, he backward for now. For a few seconds, the absolute flat was frozen. The admirers sat wide-eyed and silent, the air blubbery with unease. The cameras kept rolling, capturing everything. The tightness in Harry's jaw, the faint glimmer of claiming in Graham's eyes, and the awkward, bowed, frightened expressions of the added guests on the sofa, who looked like they capitulated to melt into the cushions. Harry's breathing was oral now, shallow, but quick. His aspect was rigid, his hands clenched so deeply his duke were white. Graham, in abrupt contrast, leaned back in his armchair with calm precision, his fingers steepled in advance of him. The blackout was burst aback, Graham gently said. You assume upset. The words were soft, but sharp, like a surgeon's scalpel. Harry's arch airtight adjoined him, his eyes blazing. Upset. You anticipate this is upset. You sit here, Graham, making veiled jabs at me, at my wife, at my family, and you anticipate I don't notice. You anticipate I don't apperceive absolutely what you're doing. Graham's expression didn't change. And what absolutely am I doing? You access me into a spectacle, Harry hissed. That's what you do. That's what this appearance does. You bring body here, accomplish them, feel welcome, a fresh cut them bottomward for sport, all while assuming it's aloof a bit of harmless fun. Graham aged his head slightly, his articulation still measured. And you came anyway, alive all that. Why the catechism seemed to bang Harry like a concrete blow. He blinked at Amantin as though aggravating to compose himself, but the acrimony didn't fade. I came because I anticipation maybe you'd be different. He spat. Maybe you treat me like an animal being, not aloof. Another headline. Graham's smile hardened, though it never accomplished his eyes. I've treated you absolutely like every other guest who sat here. Annihilation more, nothing less. You're the one who seems to anticipate the aphorism shouldn't administer to you. Harry's anchor clenched on his knees. Oh, don't accord me that sanctimonious nonsense, he snapped. You anticipate you're better than the tabloids, aloof because you say it with a laugh. But you're not. You're worst at atomic. They're honest about what they are. The admirers let out an aggregate babble at that, some gasping softly. Graham's countenance furrowed, his emphasis cutting any time so slightly. Worse. You're accusing me of actuality. Worse than the affidavit that hounded your mother to her death. Is that what you're saying? Harry attempted to his feet, his face flushed with rage. Don't you, cartel, bring my mother into this, he shouted, his voice alveolate above the studio. Don't you dare. Graham leaned back slightly at the abrupt eruption. The other guests froze, their eyes darting between the two men. Harry, Graham said after a moment, his articulation alike but with an apparent edge. You've spent years invoking her name when it